Greetings, Internet. Today's video is about how can Christians trust their brains. Last one was about how atheists can trust their evolved brains. Since we're asking the question of just how much we can trust our brains given the constraints of a worldview, it might be prudent to ask how Christians can trust their minds given a biblical worldview. I'm sure all of the epistemically responsible Christians out there have already scoured their Bibles and carefully cataloged all of the epistemological hurdles a Bible-based supernatural worldview presents any given person in their experience. You did do that, right? Right. Tell me you didn't just knock on atheists for evolved brains and not even ask any hard questions about Christianity along these lines? Are you kidding me? Okay, fine. We'll do it right here. Recall that mental ward where no one was able to give the one patient a trust your brain no matter what philosophy card. As it turns out, mental wards can be quite full of extreme religious confidences of many bizarre and disturbing flavors, and that these people just had brains enabling them and forcing them to go so far overboard regardless of any intentional sins of theirs. Is God there helping them sort fact from fiction? Is he helping all of the neurotypical people in different religions find the truth? But he's definitely leading you right. For starters, if we accept that Yahweh allows other people of other religions to be deceived by demons into thinking those religions are true, then we have the problem that we don't know we aren't the ones in the wrong religion being deceived. Note, the wrong religion can also refer just as easily to the thousands of false versions of Christianity, since there are so many ways to pervert the fundamental salvation message in the human heart, as even many Christians will tell you. And this is not some hypothetical possibility like the classic philosophical problem of being a brain in a vat. If you believe Christianity is true, much like Chief Engineer Geordi LaForge with the holodecks on Star Trek in the last video, you believe demons actually exist in droves and are actually out to get you. It's an unavoidable part of your worldview. That takes the situation from mere philosophical possibility to practical probability. And yet, with what do we have to defend ourselves against those odds? That Christian God that suspiciously doesn't seem to be on the same team as billions of other demonically deceived people for no particular reason that we know of? Why would you be so special? How can you be so sure you and similarly encultured Christian folk were the chosen ones and all of those other people weren't instead? The only thing that seems to be standing in the way of epistemic anarchy here is human narcissism, which would be a sin that demons or jinn love, right? This would be just like Geordi LaForge arbitrarily deciding he can't ever be trapped in a holodeck simulation again because he's just such an amazing engineer. It couldn't happen. So no matter how much intellectualizing you might want to do, you have no idea about whether you're being systematically duped by highly intelligent, way more experienced, evil forces out to do just that. You already agree on your own terms that your God lets that happen to people in droves. Are you willing to ask the absolutely fair epistemic question, why not me? And then what do you do after you're that honest? Of course, the jinn, the demons of Islam, would never let you ask those hard questions or be that honest about the answers, so it is perfectly understandable if you reject my perfectly lucid observation here for whatever completely irrational reasons that come to mind. To be sure, Jesus wants us to believe that his God isn't out to betray our requests for spiritual clarity, see Matthew 7:7-12. But recall in another video of mine how well that went for William Lane Craig's Holy Spirit defeater though. But God sure does seem to have a lot of catch-all excuses that make such a claim practically worthless in our actual first-person experience. How would I ever know I'm praying for guidance with a pure heart or whether or not I have some hidden sin, given we're taught how depraved we are and how deceived by demons we might be? Why should I be confident I'm asking any more earnestly than anyone else around the world in every other religion that's wrong? Or if your prayers are apparently answered, how do you know that it was actually intended to be the answer to your prayer? Perhaps there is some other more important divine reason for the same thing occurring, and it is just incidental that your prayers seem to be answered. Maybe God wasn't actually trying to validate your current view on your spiritual life. How would you know? Are we to assume false confidence, confirmation bias, and coincidence are non-existent in a responsible Christian worldview? Or should we presume that the Christian God is obligated to let us know when the message was not intended for us? Or when there wasn't supposed to be a message at all, despite appearances? Does the Christian God dispatch angels to make sure certain things don't incidentally happen to communicate the wrong message and degree of spiritual confidence? I mean, just after equating all non-Jews, i.e. pagans, to sinful Christians and tax collectors, Jesus in Matthew 18:20 claims that if two of you on earth agree about anything you ask for, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where two or three gather together in my name, there I am with them. End quote. And perhaps some genuine Christians should get together and ask Jesus to be less prejudiced against non-Jews for starters. I may be a biased non-Jew, but this two or three are gathered bit sounds like run-of-the-mill group psychology. You feel extra confident because natural selection favored group cooperators in survival situations for millions of years, and the Bible merely presents us with a superstitious version of that of course doesn't actually work. Or at least you can have no idea when it's actually working if you're honest. Satan is amazing at his job yet again. For sure, your particular prayer group may very well feel convicted on some particular issue of some spiritual significance, but two or three Methodists will feel convicted in a contradictory way to your group's convictions, and two or three Mormons will feel convicted in yet another contradictory way on the same issue, and two or three Muslims will feel convicted differently yet again, and even two or three IRS employees might feel extra comfortable with collecting taxes from churches who aren't doing anything for the community but sowing this kind of pointless and distracting spiritual confusion. By the way, quite a few more than just two or three Christians named Steve with degrees in evolutionary biology got together and decided evolution was true. But that doesn't make it right? And do Christians really expect prayer to move proverbial mountains or accomplish anything significant? Or do they typically settle for suspiciously impotent concepts like, it's all about being dependent on God? The most popular Christian perspective on how their God answers prayer is in the form of yes, no, or wait. But obviously that frame of understanding covers every logically possible outcome of future events, even if Jesus decides to go on vacation from actually answering prayer for a few million years. Bottom line, you don't have to doubt that the Christian God actually answers prayers to have no idea when that's actually happening. And it's not just demons out to deceive you. In the Bible, it says that Yahweh will revisit the sins of the father to the third and fourth generation. Now, those are the sins of up to 4 other people, 2 of which you've probably never even met at all, that you can be randomly punished for. If you're an orphan, you've never met any of them. And if God isn't sexist, as in the morality of women is actually just as important as it is with the men, which is not a view easily defensible from the Bible, that's actually the sins of up to 30 other people that can be airdropped on you from family sinner history. If that's not flying blind in terms of understanding your moral place in the Christian God's universe, I don't know what is. I mean, do you suppose God is going to explain to you in some easily understandable way that this is happening to you, or might you not get the wrong idea from being randomly punished from your first-person perspective? Do you know any other Christians that can detail the sins and divine consequences of their entire family tree along these lines? No? Oh dear. It's a good thing all 30 of those people wrote detailed and astute spiritual memoirs so that you might have some better chance of sorting any of this out, right? That didn't happen either, did it? They didn't? Oh, shoot. Well, yet again, I'm not feeling very qualified to sort any of this out. As it turns out, one of my grandfathers was a kid in Germany during World War II and a member of the Hitler Youth. As I understand it, he claimed that he didn't have any knowledge of what was going on, and maybe that's true. I wouldn't know otherwise. He was just a kid in the equivalent of Boy Scouts. But maybe it's not true, and perhaps he harbored typical anti-Jew sentiments of that disgruntled post-World War I German culture. That's not improbable. Kids often readily ingest the sentiments of their parents, and thought crimes are apparently more than enough for Jesus to infinitely hate. Perhaps my German grandfather was a bit more involved than he preferred to let on. I would have no idea if I'm being punished for that in some way. And that's just one of 30 people I really have no helpful spiritual intel on. So to review, are you being deceived by demons? Is your understanding being corrupted by your own hidden sins? Is God perhaps hardening your heart or sending you strong delusion? Are you being punished for the sins of up to 4 generations ago because of the sins from people you've never even met? Did God hate you from the womb just like he did for Jacob's brother Esau? Is God using you as a pawn for completely unrelated purposes to your own spiritual understanding and salvation, as he did for Pharaoh that one time? Are you part of an entire corrupt nation of rebels where not even a single man, woman, or child, or even their pets, deserve mercy, such as when Abraham was pleading with Yahweh to spare some cities from complete destruction? Might you just be in need of some divine display of magic tricks and you would be properly spiritually aligned, and God just has other priorities you know nothing about? Did God, as the divine potter, arbitrarily make you for common purposes, as a sinner predestined to destruction, and there's nothing you can do about it? Are you a bona fide miracle-working Christian who happens to be at least slightly out of sync with the proper divine light spiritual frequency, whom Jesus is going to reprimand and say, "I never knew you," and "Depart from me, you evildoer," on Judgment Day? Did you even once consider your own avalanche of biblical epistemic hurdles? Before you were so concerned about whether evolution might favor more and more generalized intelligence over time for sentient replicators to outcompete their duller counterparts. You're asleep at the wheel of your own biblical nightmare, and you're going to worry about my evolved brains? Really? So did I help you pull the plank out of that eye of yours? Evolution is largely out to trick us into replicating, despite us not at all having to. But it isn't really that smart about it. People have figured out that they can have sex without replication via condoms, birth control, etc., and live a decent life as a free-spirited sentient being. But good luck outsmarting Satan, or whomever. They're super good at their job. More of that later. Why is Satan so ridiculously good at his job?